Morning. Kumlen Ablat Gemara. Gimel Thomas today. It's 29th year. Check the Bible. Lamed Zayin Ahmed Aleph, continuing to learn about football, which was initiated by Hillel. So the Gemara continues on top of the page, 6 lines on the top of the page. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, Yisaymin, orphans, ain't tzrichin pusbul. They don't need a pusbul. And a big machlekes are showing what exactly we're referring to. Rashi says over here, and many are trying to say, we're talking about their father's loans do not get cancelled on Shemitah, because the business will see the Gemara, the business takes care of it, and therefore Shemitah is not hashtamid. Other Rishonim learn we're talking about the children's loans themselves. That the children's loans, there's no Shemitah by Yisaymin. Some don't require Puzbul, that Rabbi Gamliel Bezdin, because Rabbi Gamliel and his Bezdin, in other words, the leaders of the Eden, Avi and Shal Yisaymin. In every generation, who controls the Yisaymin? It's the Bezdin, and therefore this doesn't fall under the law. You shouldn't approach and oppress the borrower to repay you. We learned over there. There's actually an interesting discussion here. If a child is a cotton, we're talking about Yisrael, then obviously they're not mechuyev mitzvahs. If they're not mechuyev mitzvahs, what do you have to tell me? Yisaymin are not chayiv in prosbul, and who is which child is mechuyev in prosbul? So there's a whole discussion whether Shemitah and all the loans are forfeited. Is that something that happens automatically? That the king, that the Eibusher takes the loan away and cancels it for you, so you don't have to do anything. Because if you learn that way, then it makes sense for a child as well. Doesn't whether it's even a chayv mitzvahs, but the fact of the matter is, all the loans to him all get cancelled, or all his loans, could get cancelled. That's why the one has to say that by Yisaymin is different. But if you learn that it's not of course malka, but that's something that you have to make, if there's a mitzvah incumbent on every person Shemitah to be mafkir all their loans and to do mafkir their field, make it all ownerless, then there's a discussion. So what's shot in Gemara here? A child doesn't have a chiv of mitzvahs. So regardless of the yosem or not a yosem. We learned with it, ain't kaishin pruzbul el ala karka. You cannot write a pruzbul unless you have some property. And why is that important? Big machlekes is According to Rashi, because we learned before already a rule that Chachamim in the beginning of Masechta, we don't make takanas unless it's common. Now most loans have backup, have some kind of collateral, some kind of security, and usually it's on property. They go to a bank, they want security, otherwise they won't give a loan. What they do will be extremely exorbitant interest rates. So same thing here, pruzbul. Since it's a kind of chavim, it has to be done in the most common way of lending money. Others say the reason is if there's property involved, then it's as if you already paid the person back. It's not like he's coming to collect a loan. He already got paid because he got property. There's a lien on the property, and the shibud is sufficient to say that it got carried over and it's now in the domain of the malva. Irrelevant if the property is equal to the amount or not equal to the amount. As you said before, the same property can come back and forth, and get the full amount. Saying about it further, what have the borrower has no property, mizakeh, but if they are kosher, then the lender has to be mizakeh through another person to give the borrower a small teeny sliver of property so that you can say he has property. The common culture, what size of I feel like kelash even just a stalk of a cabbage. In other words, it doesn't matter how big the property is, because even we learned before, the smaller property, like tina of a baye, can be recirculated and come back and forth, and eventually get equal to the full amount. Furthermore, bigger finish. Even if I just allowed you to use my property to place your oven, as if you have property. So it's not so about Tani Hillel himself said, but this is different Hillel. It's called Damayra. You need a potted plant that has a puncture. Then you can write a proof that's considered property. So it seems to me, but if there's no puncture, you can't. But it's the fact that it's sitting on the ground, taking up room. So why, if you allow me to place my potted plant on your ground, on the lender's ground, you just said that that's considered as if I receive property. What's the difference if there's a puncture in it or not? Am I about the place? No, the money chasich, we're talking about it sitting on pegs. It's not sitting on the land itself. So only if there's a puncture, then it's considered land. Rashi Makdele Gidma, the Rashi used to give away the bottom, the stump of a tree because they were right. Proves on it. Anything to do with property is good enough. They went further. They wouldn't write any document or anything else. They would just say to each other, like we do on Rosh Hashanah. They would say that we're giving over to you all of chayvus, so I can collect it whenever I so desire. So the Gemara. Yenisim most gave over words of Chibarabba, said, I'm giving over to you all my stars. Amalei Tzrichna Media Chidu gotta say Rabbeinu said to Chibarabba, do I have to say anything else? Amalei Lechif, that's it. You don't say anything else. Probably learned ain't like karka. What if the borrower has no property, but other is like karka, but the guarantor has property? Good enough. You prove me right. You could be right. Prove me already. What about lo you lo ain't like karka? Neither of them have any property. But there's another party, for example, Reuben and Shimon. Reuben wants to lend money to Shimon, but Shimon has no property, no guarantor, or guarantor has no property. But Levi owes money to Shimon. That is known as Shibudu de Rab Nosson, that since Levi owes money to Shimon, now he owes the money to Reuben. So it's just, and Levi has property, that's good enough. It's Kaishon Prusbul. Then it's good enough you can write a Prusbul. How? Why? With Rab Nosson, based on Rab Nosson, and Allah like Rab Nosson. Tanya we learned the B'rais Rab Nosson, but Rab Nosson said, "Minayin, how do we know? The Noish b'Chavei the Monda b'Chavei Chavei. Right? If you lend a person $100 and he lends on somebody else, Minayin shemaitzi mezev and Noish nezahaino that the last person owes the first person. Tamal Leimer to the pasuk with Nosson. That if you lied, you swore false, and then you have to and you made it, you swore false, you have to reimburse the person. Who should you give it to? The person you're guilty to. Obviously, you have to give it to the person you owe the money to. What's the chiddush? Chiddush is that even though if that person owes money to somebody else, you pay to that third party. So now as we learn, Hashvi is Mishametes. The Mishnah says later on that Shemitah Mishametes will cancel as Hamilva, the loan. Whether there's a document, whether there's no document. Now, even in a document, you have a document that has a lien on property. It's called Yesh by Achrayis, right? You have the view of Rab Meir. Rab Meir says Achrayis Choy Sefer. He says incorporating in a document that there's some lien on the property, you don't have to, because it's obvious. Every loan is that way. But the Chacham, they said that you have to document it. So this is going for the Chacham. So whether it's a star or out of star. What do you mean with a star or without a star? So there's two ways of learning. Rabbi Shmuel, they both say, Bishtar, star sheyesh boy achrayis nechosim. Star means if it's documented and it incorporates a lien on properties. Or shaloi b'shtar, even a loan that has properties recorded in the star, according to the way they understand, Shemitah comes along and cancels it, even though the properties, as you can argue, the properties as if it's already transferred to the lender. It's not even anymore a case of collecting from the borrower. If you hold shibudu the rights on that, no, it goes to the property. B'shtar she'ein b'achrayis l'chasin. What do you mean? Shaloi b'shtar? There's no lien on the property. But kosh gemil v'peh. Then I'm talking about an oral loan. Of course, it gets cancelled. There's nothing. And that's the view of Rabbi Shmuel. They would say no. Star means star she'ein b'achrayis l'chasin. What does the star mean? The star means only if there's no lien on the property, at least not recorded in the star. In other words, if the star did have a lien on the property, it's recorded in the star, then Rabbi Yechon says as if the malva collected already, and therefore Shemitah does not cancel it. So it seems that the argument would be whether shibuda, when there's a shibud, when there's a lien on properties, is that mahat Torah? So it's from the Torah, so therefore it's as if it already transferred to the lender or not. But we also had a machlekes in Gemara Sotah of Chafei and Sham Basil regarding a woman in the Ksuba. Do we say command the govy dom as if the lender mamish already collected already, or doesn't like you govy dom? Hillel says like you govy dom. And that's what there's a very fine line between the view of Hillel, where we say like you govy dom, and yet we say shmuda the raisa as if the mal already has it. How do we reconcile the different Gemaras where an alina property as if the lender already has it, not exactly has it? That's all they're saying, trying to explain the difference. But so Yishlaki Rabbi Yechon will say, star means a star that does not have a chrayis. The chosin shalei b'star means milva peh. But a star she had a chrayis. The chosin ain't a mishamet. That doesn't get cancelled as if the lender already received it. Tani was Rabbi Yechon and Mishra. We looked like Rabbi Yechon and B'rais said, supporting their opinion. Star choid mishamet. Star choid cancels the im yesh boy a chrayis. The chosin ain't a mishamet. Clearly, the B'rais said, but if there's a chrayis, it doesn't get cancelled. Clearly, Rabbi Yechon is shlokish. Tell you another Brisa says similarly. See, when in the loan, I don't say that there's a mamash loan, a lien on this property. I just write down where all my properties are, but the measure, I document where the borders are and the boundaries and so on. Ain't a mishamet. The Shmita won't cancel. Even I don't nominate a particular field. I just say my entire estate is encumbered. It's good enough. Again, it doesn't get cancelled. It's all like a Mechel Shlakish. Says the Gemara. Krei Veid Rabasi, a relative of Rabasi, have Lehushta had a document that because the Chasim is written there that there's an Achrayis the Chasim that this loan is backed up by property. Also, the Kamar Abasi came. If he wanted what to do, came for Abasi in there. Shmiti, can I collect it? Amalei Mishamet and Mishamet. The Shmiti cancel not. There's an argument versus Rabbi Shmuel. Amalei Ein Mishamet. He followed his Rebbe. Rabbi Yechon is like what? Shmiti will not cancel it. Shavkei. He left Rabasi, but also the Kamar Rabbi Yechon asked the same question. This is the second time we have us in Gittin there, where you asked one Rav, and then you went ask another Rav. When clearly you're not allowed to do that, and. So did he go to other Rav to find a psak, or did he go just in theory to ask a question? But if you tell the other Rav that this is what the Rabbi Shmuel Paskin, this is what Rav Asi Paskins, what do you say? According to many you can. Amalei Mishamet. They went to Rabbi Yechon and said, does get cancelled. The very Rabbi Yechon who said that Shmita does not cancel ruled that it does cancel. Also, Rabbi Asi came to Rabbi Yechon, Amalei Mishamet. They didn't want to attack him straight away. So he asked him a general question, tell me, Shmita cancels a loan that has encumbrances or not? Amalei Mishama, it does get cancelled. So what do you mean? What matter is Amalei Mishama? You're the one, you and Shlati both say that Shemitah does not cancel a star that has a lien on a property. Amalei, he said the same thing we learned a short while ago. He says, because they were talking about a get in the laws of Shabbos, whether you write over another writing, whether we compare the laws of Shabbos to the laws of get. He says, because I think something is right. You think that's the halacha? I didn't hear from my Rebbe's, and therefore not. So interesting. Every time, how come we don't find every time Yechon gives an opinion, they should say to him, so this is what you think we should be doing, or this is just theory? Because it's already twice we have him said to Gittin that he said, because I think this is the way it should be, doesn't mean that that's how it is. Malay, and last time it was the Shlokish himself who asked Rabbi Yechon. Even though the mother said Rabbi Yechon and Shlokish both said, the Shlokish turned Rabbi Yechon, what's going on? Malay, but Tony calls him out. But we learned these three brises that support you. Maybe that follows you in Shammai and Saita. Maybe all these brises that say as if the Malva already had it, it's as if a star that's ready to be collected, as if the Malva already collected it. So not also we learned over there. If I lend you money and you gave me collateral, a mashkin, or the bezin, if you actually hand over your shtaris to bezin, aim is something shmita alone cancels. I told you yesterday it's a big discussion. So what do we prove if we have this rule over here already? And that's why we say this applies even to a milva al peh. You can do a proof because there's no documents to give to the bezin. So Bishlei Moshe the Bezin makes sense. It talks about dinner. The Bezin now is holding on to it. So therefore, and Bezin says Hefker. Bezin says Hefker. We say Hefker, Bezin Hefker. They took ownership, so it's no longer your loan. Fine. El Mil Lamashkin, my timer. Just because you lend money and I have some kind of security, what do the rules have to do with Schmidt? The fact that there's an outstanding loan, Schmidt, it gets cancelled. He says, because I'm holding on to the security, and therefore I don't have to ask you for the loan reimbursement. When you're paying me back the loan, is in order to get your security back. Abaye says, according to you, let's say Reuben lent Shimon money, and then Reuben moved into Shimon's chatzah. We'll learn about Matthias how to do that in a way that it's not considered ribbis, that you're getting paid back extra. But you live in the chutzah, the tough is like, so I'm living now on your property. I don't have to make a proof of anything because I have your property here. Shiny mashkin, you missed the point. You don't have collateral security to the property. The property is not security. The mashkin is something that something that's portable that I give you as security. And so how's that different? We learned during Psachim, the in fact has right over the mashkin. And he's according to Rashi, that's not really over here, maybe you can't tell what he holds, but according to Rashi, Psachim, other places, he holds that you're like a shoyl, like a borrower, because you have every right to use it. And if anything goes wrong, even an onus, the lender's responsible because he has to reimburse to bring the security back to the borrower, to get paid. According to Taisus, he's a shaymer sacher. He has right to use it, but he's not total ownership. But nevertheless, how do we know that the security is more than just security, that I have rights in it? Because it says in parts of the if you return it to a poor person, let's say blanket every night, you're doing the tzedakah. What is tzedakah? I'm giving back to the person's item. How in the world is that tzedakah? Must be that during the day it actually transfers ownership to the lender, and that's why every night he returns it as if he's doing tzedakah. You may know kind of tzedakah, and I wouldn't tzedakah from the candle about chayv shekayin mashkin. You learn another about chayv who's kayin mashkin. So we learn in the Mishnah. This is very interesting. So here we're learning all the time how everything gets cancelled and so on and so forth. Right? There's no loans anymore. It says, if somebody wants to, right now we're learning like option. If somebody wants to return pay on Shemitah, even though technically I don't have to pay you, but I want to pay you on Shemitah. So the lender has to inform him, by the way, Mishamet Ani. You don't owe me the money anymore. I'm canceling. And this supports the opinion that says it's not automatic after the malka that suddenly you don't owe the money anymore. It's a chiv on the lender to cancel the loan. Because the word in the Gemara, mishamet ani, I'm canceling. The bar says afa became nevertheless. You kabel heymen, you should accept it, and it's a noble thing, it's not a bad thing. You can say, oh, how can you take the money? It says, no, you want to gift it to me, pleasure. Remember, it says these are the words of Shemitah. So there are words that the conversation has to go on. Rabba goes further, says with Tolile, you can sort of force him, but the Rashi learns forcing, others disagree totally. At the Yemer Hachi, you can actually force the borrower to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to pay you, even though I don't have to pay you, I'm going to pay you. Rashi actually says this is talking about when the borrower came and said, I want to pay you. The borrower initiated this conversation. And then you said, you don't have to pay me. So the borrower said, fine, I'm getting out of here. That juncture, you can go ahead and force him. Because he already came along and said he's willing to pay. So, but it's time in the world a lender to go to every borrower and say, Shmita, I want to get paid. You can't do that. So it says, well, you go. So what do we achieve? Others say, even according to Rashi, you can go, that view, you can go further because I'm not asking you the money as the payment of my loan. I'm asking you, give me a gift. It happens to be the equal value of the loan, but I'm asking you for a gift. Others say Tolele doesn't mean putting pressure at all because you're not allowed to, just convince him. By the question, it says, when he pays him, when the borrower pays back, I shouldn't say I'm doing it as a loan. He should actually say, I'm giving you as a gift. Who is forcing coming to gift? Who forces gifts? Rabbi says, yes, totally. Part of the part of what you're forcing, part of the conversation. After you say you don't owe me, and the guy then says, I say Shmita, and the guy then says, I know, but I'm going to give you a gift. Abba Bar Marta, the who Abba Bar Menyumi, Abba the son of Marta, who also is known as Abba the son of Menyumi, have Masi Beit Abba Zuzah, Abba lent him money. I see in Ela B'Shvis. Now Rashi already tells us none of this happened in the year Shemitah because Shemitah does not cancel the loan to the last 5 minutes of Shemitah. That's why you do approval again then in the 7th year as well. The loan doesn't get canceled to the very end of the year. So during the Shemitah year, I can still collect my money. It's after the Shemitah year that you can no longer collect the money. So he actually says, even though it says Shvius, he means when Shvius was still noig, it's after Shemitah. So he owed him money. I said, and he came to him right after Shemitah to pay back. And he said, I went to say to look, I canceled the loan. I cleaned the vessel. So the Abba Bamenyum took him and went home. Not because he actually didn't know that he has to pay. Also, Abaye came to visit his uncle or his Rebbe, and he saw that he was very depressed. Why are you so depressed? I need the money, but this is what happened, and he walked away. Abaye went to that person. Did you bring money to pay back my teacher? Yes. And what happened? What did he tell you? He told me the loan's canceled. So Abaye said to him, did you say to him, Alpha P. nevertheless, I'm going to give you a gift? I didn't know how to. I want you to know that if you would have said that, then I would have been glad to take the money. Hash to me something. No, it's not too late. Go give him the money because it's a gift anyway. And say that thing. Even so, I'm going to give it as a gift. Also, he went. He gave it to Rabbi. And believe it or not, Shaklinu Minei Rabba took the money. Omar. And then Rabbi made a comment. I didn't realize that this Talmud Chacham doesn't know the halachas. There was not much of a Talmud Chacham. This is a famous rule. A person is believed to say pruzbul hoy b'yodi v'amen. I did write a pruzbul, or I did say a pruzbul. I just lost it. I have no documents, but you still owe me the money. My time, but why do you believe the lender? Why can't the borrower say to the lender, prove to me that you gave him proof? Otherwise, I don't owe you the money. But year number 8, post Schmidt, I don't owe you. Because kiva tikin rabban approval. This is the rule. Since now the Chacham came along and gave us a way, a license of how to do something. We don't believe there's anybody out there. If you do something in a legal way, why would you go ahead and not do it and then lie about it? Just do it. People will all do the correct way. If it's easy to do, why not? Why do you have to go, and be krum and then lie about it? And therefore, you don't have to swear. You don't even have to do a shus hesses the rabbanon. You don't have to do anything. He says faces because lo shavik etayda, we don't even able to do that. Ki also the kamed Rav Amalei Rav went a step further. When there's a case between a lender and a borrower, Rav would prompt. Usually we say we don't prompt anybody, right? You're not allowed to because that's being a on their behalf. But he would say, "Midday prudel hoylach." He would turn to the lender and sort of suggest it. By the way, did you have a prudel and you lost it? And what do you got? This is what we say, that you open the mouth for those who shtum, those who cannot speak. For mute, talk to them. We learn. And there was no proof with it. That if there was a balchayv that had a loan, that there was no proof with it, says the Brisa clearly he cannot collect. Here we just said that even if there's no document for approval, and furthermore the Rab would suggest it. And then the Brisa says clearly if you don't have approval of document, you cannot collect. So the Gemara Tanai, it's actually an argument of Tanaim. You don't have to have a document because we say okay, next Mishnah. We move on to a totally separate subject about avodim. Again, we're talking about takonis. So in a way, let's continue this theme, but totally unrelated subjects. So the last thing we learned was about the tikkun olam of approval. Eved shenishbe upadu, an eved kanani who's chayiv in mitzvah like a woman, so he's treated like a yid in a way. He was kidnapped, and then somebody went and redeemed him. Pidyon shuim. English remember that the person redeemed him had in mind that this person should remain an eved. He remains an eved. He remains a slave. The person who redeemed him wanted to set him free. Then lo yishtabed, he doesn't go back. Now, right now, we think that if you redeem him to be an eved, it goes back to the original owner, not to the new person, as we'll see in 1 minute. But if you intended to be free, he's set free. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Ben kach or ben kach." I don't care what your intention is. He remains an eved. Again, it sounds like he belongs to the original owner. Why? He was kidnapped. Why shouldn't he go back to the original owner? So now there's two possibilities here. One is when he was kidnapped, the original owner abandoned hope of ever seeing him again. That's called Yeush, and we'll learn in Bava that Yeush is kind of that if you abandon hope, the guy is it's free, or it's talking about before he abandoned hope. So we're going to try to understand the Mishnah. The Mishnah talking about in a case where the original owner did not abandon hope, or the original owner did abandon hope, and then try to work out what's going on here. Because the Mishnah makes a difference. Sometimes he remains an eved, and if my intention is to be set him free, he doesn't remain eved. Now, if the guy never abandoned hope, and I set him free to become, I paid out his opinions, I paid the ransom in order to set him free. So what? So what if I had intention to set him free? But he belongs to somebody else. It's not mine to decide whether he goes free or not. So how do we understand this? And if the original guy abandoned hope, and I had in mind that he should be an eved, why does it go back to the original owner? So the Gemara asks, what's exactly going on here? Before the abandoned hope, if before, why if I had in mind that he should go free, he goes free, but he should go back to the original owner. After he abandoned hope. So why if I had in mind that he should remain eved, he goes back to the original guy? The guy already abandoned hope. Amar Abai, we'll have a Bai, we'll have a Rava, two ways of learning Mishnah. Bai understands the Mishnah before he had ever abandoned hope. When it says if I intended that he should remain an eved yishtabed l'rabadishin, goes back obviously to the original owner. That was our problem. Why, if he intended to set him free, does he go free? He's a free man. Why? This is takana. This is a tikkun. And what is that? Obviously doesn't go to the second one. You intended to go free. Why should he become your evid? Oh, but you know why? Dilma memoni. People will say, why should I have to pay ransom for this evid to go back to his original owner? Not interested. Pidyon Shvuim is a yid to be a full-fledged yid. For him to go back as an evid, not going to do it. And Rav Shimon disagrees. He says, even if I had a mind to set him free, he should go back. You know why? Because a mitzvah to redeem a guy, because he's not really a guy. Ever Kanani is a yid, and therefore the same mitzvah pidyon shvuim, which we learned, there's no mitzvah gray and pidyon shvuim applies here as well. So nobody's going to have this cheshbon and not going to pay out. So therefore, he goes back. Even if I had a mind, he should go free. He goes back to the original owner because the guy wasn't miyash. That's about his understanding of the Mishnah. Comes when Rav and says, no, le'elam la'achayesh mishlomat, he already was miyash. Okay, for miyash, I understand. I had a mind that should be free. He goes free. If I had a mind to go in Evid, why should I go back to the first one? So Rav says, who said anything about the first one? When the Mishnah says, if I had a mind that he should become an Evid, it goes to the second one. The person as if he bought it from the captors. Talking about Afiyish. L'shum Evid means yishtabit l'Rav Sheni. Goes to the new master. L'shum b'chayrin lo yishtabit means loyle Rabbi Rishon v'loyle Rabbi Sheni. To neither one. Well, the Rabbi Sheni loyle l'shem b'chayrin deemed it, and the Rabbi Rishon nami loyle l'achayim shabbat. Guy banned hope. So according to Rav, the Mishnah makes sense the way it is. It's talking about the if after years it doesn't go back to the first one, but when it says it becomes an evid, it means the second one. But how do we understand Rav Shimon in the middle? If I wanted to set him free, why in the world does he become an evid? Why should we become an evid? We follow the rule of Chizkiah. We want to make sure that avodim don't run away because they're a commodity. Their possession. They belong to somebody. And if the evid feels that he's not being treated properly, he'll just run away. Make sure he gets captors to take him away, and then force someone else to spend money to pidyon shvuim. And it's not right. We want to make sure that avodim don't take advantage or exploit this law. So the Chomer Chizkim in Ma'om the Benkach Benkach hey, we don't want Kol Echad Echad every Eved Hoylech run Umapel Atzim Legayosas. He will throw himself in the hand of the captors Umafki Atzim Miyad Rabbi. And this way he can get. He doesn't like his original master, and therefore he's free. Anybody who can afford to redeem him obviously has money, so he wants to go to a richer master. Nope, we don't want that to happen. Ask a question. Meisrei we learned Nebraisa Lehem Reb Shmuel's argument was Kishem Shemitzah lived as Mechayim. Like a mitzvah Pidyon to set free Yisrael Kach Mitzvah Litas Avodim. This is according to Baya. That was exactly what Shmuel said. The Chachamim is talking before years, and I still say that even if you want to set him free, he goes back as an Evid. Why? And people are not going to, and are still going to go ahead and redeem because there's a mitzvah. That makes sense according to Abaya. That's what Rav Shmuel says. Kishem, Rav, who says I have to yivush, and therefore, if I want to set him free, what do you mean is a mitzvah? So what's that do with anything? I want to set him free. Why should he become an Evid? Isn't the rain reaching a little because we want to stop the avodim from running around and trying to fall in the hand of captors? Nothing to do with mitzvah of pidyon shvuim redeeming those who were captured. Rabbi says, Shimon himself was wavering. He wasn't sure what the Chachamim were saying, and therefore he's hedging his bet. If you're talking about before years, that's what you're saying because it wasn't clear what the Chachamim are referring to when they say that if he wants to be an Evid, remains an Evid. If you want to set him free, you set him free. So if you're talking about before years, if I'm responding, don't worry. There's a mitzvah. Always and people always pidyon shvuim. So if I want to set him, if I wanted to be an Evid, what do you call it? He should be an Evid. Because that is why Rav Shimon says, because you say that if he wants to set him free, he doesn't go back to the first person, otherwise nobody's going to redeem him. I say people will redeem him. It's a mitzvah pidyon shvuim. But if you're referring to after Yerush, then Kidduchizkiah, we need to stop our body from taking advantage. Well, Rav, and that's a simple question. Rav says, no, after Yerush, so the new owner now owns the Eved, but who did he buy it from? It doesn't belong to the captors. They're goyim. They captured somebody. So who's he buying it from? So who's he acquiring it from? This Eved belonged to a first master. Captors came along and took possession of him. Okay, and let's say the first Eved was abandoned hope. So the Eved now is technically a free person because the captors don't own him in any way. So as soon as you redeem him, he should be set free. What do you mean he becomes your Eved? Where did you buy it from? The Eved didn't sell himself. So who did you buy it from? Who did this acquisition? Where did you get it from? Me, Kanile? What says yes? Shaboy Migufi Mikanile, the captors, yes. In Kanile, the captors, like a war. When you go to war, you'll see you have a certain, rights. There's certain conventions. Same thing here. Captors have they possess, at least they have ownership over your activities. They don't own you personally, but they have not like a Yisro who owns another Kanani, owns a goof of the Kanani. That's why you need to get Shichur. They own the Maisi Yodav, and that's what they're selling to the Yid. So, but once they sell the Maisi Yodav to the Yid, and the Yid engaged, as Ash explains, takes him to the mikveh and goes through Mila and Tefillah, then the Yid owns the goof of the person as well. So the goyim own the Maisa Yadav, and then the Yid takes to the next step, and then naturally he becomes Eva Kanani belongs now, becomes a possession of the Yid, and needs to get Shichur to set him free. How you know the guy actually has rights? It says in the pasuk, those who live amongst you, mehem tiknu, from them you can buy. So mehem tiknu atem kainim mehem. What do you mean have tiknu? They already said the pasuk you can buy from them. Why is it repeated again? Why does it say tiknu mehem tiknu atem kainim mehem, that you can buy from them? The loy heim kainim mehem. They cannot buy an eved from you. The loy heim kainim zem mizen. Nor do they buy from themselves. We would have thought they cannot buy from themselves. What are you talking about? You just said they cannot buy from themselves, and then you say, I would have thought they cannot buy from themselves. You just said that they don't buy from themselves. When they acquire an eved from another guy, a fellow guy, they don't own the very essence of the guy. They just own the rights over his handiwork, all his earnings, and everything else. I would have thought they don't even own that. They have no rights even over the earnings. I'll say there's a logic to it. If a Yisrael can a goy, at least for his possession that all his earnings go to you, is surely a goy can be a goy. In other words, if a goy can possess a yid, if a goy takes a yid and takes him an ever, that's why there's a mitzvah like it should get taken back. Then what does a goy own the yid? The right, his earnings. Surely a goy can own a goy. Okay, maybe if I bought. If a guy buys a guy, he has rights over this guy. If I kidnaps a guy, it takes him captive. Well, who said he has any rights? Like Papa, the famous thing, Amoin and Moav Tire b'Sichen. The Yidden were not allowed to conquer Amoin and Moav. Yet once Sichen conquered Moav, then the Yidden had waged war against Sichen and would conquer all possessions of Sichen. They can also keep Moav, because since Sichen owned Moav, it's no longer considered Moav. It's now considered part of the territory of Sichen. And a guy can possess another guy. I know that a guy can possess an Ebed Kanani. So he means like an Ebed Kanani. How do you know that he can possess that? It says that an Ebed Kanani is considered Yisrael because he went through the mikveh and the milah, and I know that if he captures that he has rights over him. But it says the pasuk Shevi, that he took over and he conquered and he conquered what do you call it? Since we call him a Shevi, that he's treated as if he is one of his captives, that it's his captive. When we Shevi, his captive, tells you that he has certain rights over. It's like a war, a kinyan chazaka. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll continue tomorrow. Have a good day.